Welcome to the Learning Lounge podcast. I'm Dr. Joel Gardner, and today we'll be talking about how teachers can address the challenges of teaching during COVID-19. So a lot of schools are beginning their fall terms in a still changing landscape. And so we want to talk about how instructors are coping and specifically discuss some strategies for engaging students and how to assess learning in this new learning format. So here today with us is Dr. Maria Angel Ferrero. She's an assistant professor of entrepreneurship and innovation at the University of Montpellier in France. So her teaching pedagogy is based on active learning approaches and the use of technology and gamification. I've been reading some of her work. She runs a blog on Medium where she shares her thoughts on education, science, and pedagogy innovation. And she's also the editor of The Faculty, which is a Medium publication about education, science, and everything in between. So we'll have all the links for those down in the description below. But Maria, we're really excited to have you here on the podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Joel, for having me. Hi, everyone.
Well, so we are all about teaching and learning and how to make that work best. And so one of the things that really piqued my interest was like you had an article where you talked about 5 ways to make your online courses more engaging. So you gave some rules or guidelines for online interaction. So maybe you can talk about some of these suggestions and how they can help create a more effective online learning experience.
Right. So one of the things I think there is like a difficulty, a challenge when you're doing online courses is that you kind of forget of the human side, right? So we don't want to do that. So I think that the first thing that any professor has to do when starting an online course is to keep that in mind. That it's not because you're using technology, it's not because you're not physically present that you can give a human touch, okay? So I say that the before that you can start into the knowledge, into giving the content to your students, is really important to warm up, right? Like what you will do when you are going to take a run. You cannot take a run with full speed at the beginning. You need to slow down, take a warm up, and then start slow, right? So this warm up for me is very important. It's like just knowing how everyone is coping, try to give like the base rules for the course, understanding whether the students know what they have to do and if they understand what to expect. So it can be just saying hello and how are you doing? How was your week? And then going for an icebreaker, for example, right? Like to break that feeling of having to use Zoom just for official things. You can also have a little bit of fun with the course. Then there are plenty of applications and tools that you can use to make it more active, because when you are in online learning, it's important to have the student at the center. So they have to be the ones that lead with their learning experience. So I use a lot of visual collaboration with my students so that they feel part of the course, right? So there are plenty of apps like Mural or Miro, which are design thinking applications that you can use, and the students can really have fun while they are learning something. So using visual collaboration for me is also a way to keep them engaged. Then you have another way of doing is trying to launch interactive quizzes or during your online session. So using gamification to make students not only to test them their knowledge, but also to make them have a little fun with the content and with what they're learning. You know, students, they love competition. So why not to use this kind of competitions in a good way so that they learn and that they remember the course in a more fun way rather than just traditional lecture where you have only information and content given to you.
I love it. So when I think about, and I know you have some other thoughts here, but just thinking about what you're talking about here. So with the warming up, in my experience, that helps in a couple of ways. It gets students to kind of get into the flow and they're in this rhythm of engaging, but also it gives you a sense for where they are and maybe some of their concerns about the topic, about their experiences at the time. Gives you, it's like a little learner analysis that you can do at the beginning to really understand where they're coming from. I love it. It's a really great idea. And then I love the idea also of this gamification. There's something about that games that make us want to engage with them. So if you can use some of those key principles, really powerful. Anyway, so great ideas. So let's see, those were a few of the things. What else? What other thoughts do you have about making your online course more engaging?
Okay, so another thing that I do usually is to have students reflect on their learning also, right? So it's not just what they have during the course or during the lecture one-on-one with the professor, but it's also about what they get to do afterwards, right? Which is the most important thing, because learning does not happen just in the classroom. It happens when you are at home. So I asked them to do like short videos of 1 minute max, where they are going to reflect on what they learned, what they found like interesting of the class, what they found challenging or difficult, or what they didn't like. So it's really important because it gives me feedback directly, so I can, as you say, identify those that are struggling, and I can take action really quickly. But it also gives them like the key to understand how they learn also, so that they can improve in their learning experience. So this is one thing that I do. And then another thing that is really important and is still linked with the human touch is trying to make the sense of a community, right? So today, community is really important for students and for millennials especially. So creating this sense of belonging, it's going to make them feel more at ease when they are in your course, but also to make connections with the other colleagues, with the other classmates, to learn better and to continue the discussion after the class. So I think those things are also really important, and it can be done really easily. It's not, you don't need a lot of preparation, but you do need to think about it, on how to make those connections.
So what are some ways you do that? I love that idea of creating this idea of a community that the students can be part of and feel part of. What are some of the strategies you've used or seen others use to help build that sense of community?
Well, so the first thing is from the beginning, like setting up the rules, but especially the common values, right? So you want every student to be on the same ground. So they have to understand that it's not just about what they learn, it's also how the complete class learns. So the more they are engaged, the more they are helping others also. So it's a way of doing that. So there are plenty of strategies. For example, there is you can create a forum, for example. So a forum is where students are going to come up with questions, maybe during class, but also after class. And other students can pop up and answer the questions. So it's not just the professor role to lead everything and lead all the discussion, but also the peer learning, which is really important, right? So this forum, it creates the sense of belonging, of being able to answer and help your classmate. That's really important. Another way is also, for example, creating groups in different social network platforms. It can be Facebook, it can be, I don't know, Instagram. There are more, let's say, education targeted, especially targeted for education, right, like Flipgrid, where you can create groups where students can share images or videos where they have questions or where they show what they've learned and things like this. So it creates really like a place to just not the difficult part of learning, but also the fun part of learning, which is being part of something, right?
Very good. Yeah, there's some powerful principles there. It makes me think about some of the adult learning principles. You know, learners love to be able to share their expertise and have everything be based on their experiences. So it's a really great way to have some of that sharing take place.
Yeah, and it's because every student it doesn't matter if they are adults or they are just undergrads. They all have experiences. And the idea of active learning, whether it's online or offline, is that the student takes the learning experience in his own hands or her own hands, right? So it's using your experience and see how the knowledge and the content you are learning can suit that or can fit to that. So I think that even for students, their personal stories speak more to them than just the professor talking about something that is, I don't know, hypothetical or something that is not for them. So that's why it's so important to have this community feeling.
I love it. You know, my background is instructional design and particularly instructional theory. And we try to, determine what really helps people to learn. And so one of those things that's really motivating, some of the motivational theory is it's got to be relevant. That makes total sense to me. If it can be centered around real world problems or scenarios that people experience in their lives or will experience in the future, like in a professional setting, it's much more engaging and the learning just increases exponentially. So that's some really great ideas there. Okay. You have talked in the past also, or written in the past about some technologies, and you even just mentioned a few apps or tools that you use in your remote learning. What other tools or apps do you use to help engage learners in the online environment?
Okay, so there are plenty. So I probably give you also the link to a new article where I have all these things like detailed, but I'm going just to choose a few of them. So the first one, I already talked about it, is called Mural. So Mural is an application for design thinking. So it's for doing workshops mainly. The functionalities it has is just amazing. And as an educator, you can have free access. So with Mural, you can do, for example, brainstorming. You can do also evaluation of ideas. You can do prototype. You can do any type of canvas for resolving problems and so on. So this one is one I use a lot. Then you have, for example, Flipgrid also. So again, is where you can share videos. So it's like an Instagram, but safe and secure for education. So it means that the data is protected for the students and for the teachers. So, when you are in education, these things matter. So this one is really cool. Then I use a lot of Evernote or Notion, which is to share mainly documents with the students, but also annotation, right? So you can see on real life how students are reading a paper or reading a content, and they can make annotations directly, and you can also give them feedback. You can also share images of the kind of information you can share is in any kind of format. I don't know what else. I use a lot also Kahoot. So Kahoot is an application for interactive quizzes. You can create polls, or you can just create multiple answer questions, and students get to compete, right, in a good way, competition. And it is more like having fun. So it's not just about testing the knowledge and testing the skills, but also like trying to have fun with the questions and the assessment. So Kahoot is also a pretty nice application for doing these kind of things. And then you have Play Factil, which is Jeopardy game kind of application. Right. So you can create your Jeopardy games with cards where you put questions, and depending on how hard the question is, well, you're going to give more points. And the students love this. Because not only they get to play a game, but they also get to taste their knowledge. So finally, they say that they see that they are learning more than they thought, right? Because when you say, okay, I'm going to make you an exam, they get, anxiety, and they are like, oh no, I don't know everything. But then when they get to play, they say, oh, I know more than I thought. So this is, I think it's a pretty cool application.
Very cool. And I think I had seen your article where you list out many more of these technologies and apps. And so we'll grab that link and make sure that it's linked in the descriptions, and also some of the tools you mentioned specifically. These are great ideas, all engaging. They keep people excited about learning. As I've looked at I'm here at the International Institute for Innovative Instruction at Franklin University. We have an opportunity to provide workshops to teachers and administrators all over the world who are also dealing with this notion of needing to teach online due to COVID. And so many of them have expressed fears, a lot of worries about teaching online. For example, how do I know the students are engaged, or how do I assess these learning of these students? But in your experience, what do you think some of people's fears are right now about teaching online? And maybe just some advice for people regarding those fears. Any thoughts on that?
Okay, so I think I will think about three main fears, and I guess I have them too. So the first thing is that you think you lack of control, right? So you lack of control on the student, because when you are in the physical classroom, you can see them, right? Those who are on the last line, that they are not the ones that come just for the course. So you can have some kind of control over your students. You also feel that there is lack of control on your content. So many professors and many teachers are afraid of putting their content online because it can be steal, or it can be used and plagiarized, or whatever. And also the lack of control on the learning experience, right? Because you don't know if the person behind the screen is really paying attention or is really understanding. And especially when you are in an asynchronous activity, well, you don't know what happens until they give you the assessment or the activity that you asked, right? So this is one of the things. The second thing, I guess, is the fear also of a lack of interaction. Because, well, you are behind a screen and you cannot really give them a lot of your physical touch, or let's say. So that's the second fear. And finally, I would say that is, it just popped up. So I'm going to go through these two.
Yeah,
first.
That's great.
So the first one is the lack of control. Well, it depends on how you plan your class. So it is true that for online teaching, you need to get prepared and plan better your activities, but you can have the same control as you have in the physical classroom. It is not because you're not having your student in front of you that you cannot provide them a good learning experience. On the contrary, I mean, I think that the fact that you're giving them opportunities and vast opportunities to get in touch with you, they are going to more likely give you the questions and interact with you because they know they are a central part of the learning. So I think that to go over this challenge is, first of all, like, be honest with your student. It's okay to have these fears, and you have to talk about it with them, because sometimes they also feel the same and they think that the professor, because he's the professor, knows everything and knows how to manage everything. And it's not true. I mean, we all went through this pandemic not knowing what to do, right? We all had our difficulties, kids to at home that we have to homeschool and everything. So we were learning also. But if you are honest from the beginning, and if you set like the rules and the expectations from the beginning, I think everything is going to be right. And there is also always the space for students to engage. And sometimes you can do anything. I mean, that happens to everyone. But you can also put some strategies to identify who are struggling and how to overcome that lack of connection or lack of control. Then the interaction part, again, is linked. It's not because we are behind a screen that we cannot be human. So it's important to show that we are there for the students. It's important to show flexibility because we don't know what they are going through. I mean, they might have problems with the internet. They might have problems in their home because of the virus. So we have to be able to understand a little bit more than if you were in the physical classroom, and to give this flexibility. And you, as a professor, say that, okay, I'm not going to be perfect. The class is not going to be perfect, and that's okay, right? So it's okay. It's a learning process. It's something that is built between the students and the professor. It's not just one way. So the interaction is going to happen if you provide the space for interaction, right?
Right.
And even I think that the fact that you are online is even better, because some students that usually in the physical classroom will be shy to ask questions. The fact that they are in a screen, they feel somehow safe because they are in their space. They are maybe at home. So they feel the safety that they can talk to you because you cannot do anything to them. It's not that you will do it in the physical classroom, but that they feel safe. So I think the interaction is even better. And now I remember the third point was this fear of having to do a double effort, right? Because I will say that, okay, it's a fear, but it's also true. I mean, it takes time to prepare for an online class, because it means that you have to think about not just a plan A, but also a plan B and a plan C, right? What happens if connection doesn't work? What happens if the technology I'm using, blocks? So yes, there is a little more preparation, but it's not that difficult. And today we have so many applications and so many methods and tools that we can use and grasp on, that it will be okay.
Yes. Oh, this is excellent. So I'm hearing, sometimes it's a fear of losing control, but maybe that was a false sense of control anyway. You could control what you were doing, but you can't necessarily control your students. Now you can set up those opportunities for engagement, like you said. Maybe there is some extra work that comes with teaching online. Very likely the case, or at least different format of work, so it feels like more work. But those are some great ideas, good suggestions too for how we can work with these fears. So we're running close to time on our time length here, but I did want to ask you one other question. You've talked a little bit about assessment and authentic assessment, and a lot of people are concerned with, well, how do I assess my students' learning in an online course? So maybe if you can just share some strategies or simple ways that people can assess their student learning in an online environment.
Okay. So I think that the point here is to just shift the mentality of what an assessment is. Because in traditional classroom, we think that just the fact that we ask questions and a final exam with the written responses is the best way to go. But most of the time it's not the case. And it's not the case because it doesn't reflect reality, right? You can memorize the questions and the answers to those, but it doesn't mean that you know them and that you know how to apply. So even if it's online or offline, we have to shift that mentality and think about active learning and how can we put the student at the center so he can assess his own skills. So an example of some activities which you can do either offline or online. So it wouldn't change anything. It's not because you're going online that you have to come up with new ideas. They are the same ideas, but just online. So this is my thinking. So one way is, for example, using back channel discussions. Right, so you can create, for example, a Socratic seminar or discussion on a specific topic, and it can be either synchronous, so during your Zoom lecture where the students have to debate on a specific topic, or it can be asynchronous through a back channel, for example, using WhatsApp or using the Zoom channel or the Zoom chat, or using any other application for chats, okay, or for forums. So you are assessing not only how is the student is able to communicate and debate or stay on his or her opinion in a specific topic, but also how they can evaluate those discussions, because it's a peer evaluation also. So this is, I think, a really cool activity to do, and the students, they love, and they really learn on how to communicate what they think and their opinions, and to be better in that. Another option is using explanatory videos. So today, students are very skilled in terms of digital tools, in terms of photographs and videos. So why not use those skills for learning? So they can, for example, create 1 or 2 minutes videos about a specific topic that they got to learn during a class, and explain it to their classmates. So it's not just they're going to do the video for me, but for the others. So at the end, everyone gets the knowledge, but they also get to go deeper in one specific subject, so they master it. But also they master how they communicate to others. So again, here you have the peer learning approach. Then you can also use blogs, for example. So if you don't like videos, or for any reason your students don't want to be a recorder, you can use blogs to do the same. So blogs to talk about the specific topics, where they can use the writing skills to set up a point, or to stay behind an opinion, and use research for doing that, and so on. So there are many of activities that you can use that are really not only testing their knowledge, but also the skills, the soft skills that they need to use in the workplace, right?
Communication, critical thinking, being able to persuade. This is really good additional skills that you're building into that. I love that.
Yeah, so those are the skills that we need to evaluate and to develop in our students, other than just, the knowledge and content which you can find in books.
Maybe 50 years ago, really the way that organizations worked was more rote. 60, 70 years ago, 100 years ago, we had this more industrial society where things were just repetitions and you had to have certain content knowledge. But now that we're in the information or the knowledge society, these types of skills of communication and critical thinking and being able to find evidence and use that data to make decisions, those kind of things are so important. So I love that you're embedding that into some of these approaches for authentic assessments. Just really powerful. Well, we're coming to an end here. Any final closing thoughts for those teachers and instructors who are beginning a new class now and preparing to teach their classes online again? Final thoughts or advice?
I will say that you have everything it takes to make it work. And in a ways, I think that this pandemic only speed up the process of going online. But it was something that was supposed to happen, I think, even before. But we have to get used to this, and it's the new normal. And it's not that once the pandemic goes away, hopefully, we are going to shift back to our old ways of doing. We have to be able to integrate all these things into our teaching from now on, so that when we have to, we can use both. We have to use the best of both to make it better for the student and for the professor. So I think everyone is able to do it. It needs just the right mindset, and that's it.
Wonderful. Well, I have really enjoyed talking with you today, and I know that our listeners and viewers will really appreciate your insights. So thanks again, Dr. Maria Angel Ferrero, and we really appreciate you taking the time, and it's an honor to have you on our podcast today.
Thank you, Joel. It was also an honor for me, and thank you everyone for listening. I'm really happy being here.
All right. Thank you.